It is January the 9th, 2007, inside San Francisco's Moscone Center. Apple CEO Steve Jobs walks onto a dark stage wearing his trademark black turtleneck and blue jeans. The audience expects another iPod announcement. Instead, Jobs reaches into his pocket and says, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." The crowd erupts. Within minutes, the world sees a device with a full touchscreen, desktop internet, and no physical keyboard. Across North America, millions are amazed. But inside the headquarters of Research in Motion in Waterloo, Canada, the reaction is very different. Executives laugh. Engineers dismiss it as an expensive toy. One manager reportedly asks, "Where's the keyboard?" They believe business customers would never trade physical keys for a sheet of glass. They couldn't have been more wrong. Over the next decade, the company that invented the modern smartphone would lose more than 95% of its value, surrender its dominance, and watch the industry it created pass into someone else's hands. This is the incredible rise and fall of BlackBerry. The company behind BlackBerry didn't start by making phones. It started with two engineering students chasing an impossible dream. In 1984, Mike Lazaridis and Douglas Freegan founded Research in Motion, better known as RIM, in Waterloo, Ontario. They had little money, no famous investors, and no guarantee the company would survive. Their startup was funded with a government loan worth just 15,000 Canadian dollars. They rented a tiny office, bought second-hand equipment, and accepted almost any engineering contract they could find simply to keep the lights on. Mike Lazaridis wasn't interested in becoming the next great businessman. He wanted to become one of the world's greatest engineers. As a child, he spent hours taking apart radios, televisions, and electronic gadgets just to understand how they worked. By the age of 12, he had read nearly every science and engineering book in his local library, earning a special award from the librarians themselves. While Silicon Valley dreamed about personal computers, Lazaridis believed the future belonged to wireless communication. One day, he believed information would move instantly through the air, without wires connecting anything. Throughout the late 1980s, Research in Motion survived by solving technical problems for other companies. They built networking equipment, industrial electronics, and wireless communication systems. None of these products made headlines, but every project improved the company's understanding of radio technology, digital communication, and battery efficiency. Without realizing it, RIM was building exactly the skills it would need for a completely different industry. In the early 1990s, mobile phones already existed, but they were bulky, expensive, and designed almost entirely for voice calls. Business professionals still depended on desktop computers to receive email. If an important message arrived while you were traveling, you often didn't see it until hours later. Lazaridis saw an opportunity. Instead of trying to replace the telephone, he wanted to free email from the office. That vision became reality in 1999 with the launch of the BlackBerry 850. It wasn't a smartphone in today's sense. It couldn't stream music, browse modern websites, or run thousands of apps. But it could do something revolutionary. It delivered email instantly anywhere. Using BlackBerry's secure network, messages appeared on the device only seconds after being sent. There was no need to dial into the internet or manually check for new mail. The device simply notified you. That tiny blinking red light changed business forever. Professionals quickly became addicted. Executives checked emails during meetings. Lawyers reviewed contracts while waiting at airports. Investment bankers approved deals from taxis. Journalists filed breaking stories from across the world. Doctors received urgent updates without returning to their offices. The addiction became so common that users jokingly renamed the device CrackBerry. It wasn't an insult, it was an admission that once you experienced instant email, you never wanted to go back. The technology behind BlackBerry's success was just as important as the hardware itself. Instead of relying entirely on public mobile networks, Research in Motion built its own encrypted communication infrastructure. Messages passed through secure BlackBerry servers before reaching users, making communication faster, more reliable, and far more secure than competing devices. Governments trusted it, banks trusted it, law firms trusted it. Security became BlackBerry's greatest competitive advantage. Throughout the early 2000s, BlackBerry released one successful device after another. Every model improved battery life, wireless performance, and the famous physical keyboard. Typing emails with both thumbs became second nature to millions of users. Unlike touchscreen devices that would come years later, BlackBerry keyboards allowed experienced users to type incredibly fast without looking down. Many professionals claimed they could write emails almost as quickly as they could on a laptop. Success arrived at breathtaking speed, sales climbed into the millions, revenues soared, investors couldn't buy the stock fast enough. Research in Motion transformed from a tiny Canadian startup into one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the world. The company expanded across North America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Governments adopted BlackBerry as their official communication platform. Even the White House struggled to convince President Barack Obama to give up his beloved BlackBerry because of the security it provided. Owning one became more than carrying a phone. It became a symbol of influence, intelligence, and success. By 2006, BlackBerry appeared untouchable. Nokia dominated ordinary mobile phones. Motorola had created the fashionable Razr. Palm served a loyal business audience. Microsoft offered mobile software. Yet none of them matched BlackBerry's secure email system, exceptional battery life, and legendary keyboard. Inside Research in Motion, confidence was at an all-time high. Executives believed they had already discovered the perfect formula for the future of mobile communication. They didn't realize the future was only a few months away. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs finished his presentation, held up the iPhone, and quietly changed the technology industry forever. While millions of consumers watched in amazement, executives at Research in Motion remained confident they had nothing to fear. The iPhone had no physical keyboard, it couldn't copy and paste, it didn't support third-party apps. Battery life was mediocre compared to a BlackBerry. To RIM's leadership, it looked more like an expensive entertainment device than a serious business tool. Mike Lazaridis himself reportedly questioned whether Apple could manufacture such a sophisticated touchscreen profitably. The consensus inside BlackBerry was simple. Business customers would never abandon keyboards for glass. It was one of the greatest miscalculations in business history. Apple wasn't competing for BlackBerry's existing customers, it was creating an entirely new market. Instead of asking what professionals needed, Apple asked what everyone wanted. Internet browsing, music, photos, videos, maps, a beautiful touch screen. A device that felt less like a business tool and more like a personal computer that fit inside your pocket. Then in 2008, Apple launched the App Store. Almost overnight, the smartphone stopped being just a phone. Developers began creating thousands of applications: games, banking, navigation, weather, social media, shopping, fitness. Every month, the ecosystem became stronger. Customers weren't buying hardware anymore. They were buying an experience. BlackBerry had spent nearly 10 years perfecting mobile email. Apple had quietly redefined the smartphone itself. As if that wasn't enough, Google entered the race with Android. Unlike Apple, Google didn't manufacture its own phones. Instead, it gave Android to companies like Samsung, HTC, Motorola, LG, and dozens of others. Suddenly, BlackBerry wasn't competing against one company. It was competing against an entire army of manufacturers releasing faster, cheaper, and more powerful smartphones every few months. Research in Motion knew it had to respond. The problem was that the company couldn't decide who it wanted to be. Its loyal customers demanded physical keyboards, new customers wanted giant touchscreens, businesses wanted security, consumers wanted apps. Instead of choosing one direction, BlackBerry tried to satisfy everyone. In late 2008, it launched the BlackBerry Storm, its first touchscreen phone. Expectations were enormous. This was supposed to be the iPhone killer. Instead, it became one of the company's biggest failures. The touchscreen relied on a strange clicking mechanism that users found awkward. The software was unfinished. Reviews criticized frequent bugs and sluggish performance. Verizon, BlackBerry's biggest carrier partner in the United States, reportedly received unusually high return rates. For the first time, consumers weren't lining up to buy the newest BlackBerry. They were returning it. Inside the company, engineers were becoming increasingly frustrated. BlackBerry's operating system had originally been built for secure messaging devices, not modern multimedia smartphones. Every new feature required complicated workarounds. Different engineering teams worked on different priorities. Development slowed, decisions took longer. Competitors released new phones every year, while BlackBerry struggled to modernize software that had never been designed for the future now arriving. Mike Lazaridis understood something fundamental. The operating system itself had to be replaced. In 2010, Research in Motion purchased QNX software systems for approximately $200 million. QNX produced one of the world's most reliable operating systems, already trusted in medical equipment, industrial systems, and automobiles. Lazaridis believed QNX could become the foundation of an entirely new generation of BlackBerry smartphones. It was the right decision. Unfortunately, it came years too late. Building a completely new smartphone operating system from scratch while Apple and Android raced ahead was like rebuilding a ship in the middle of the ocean. Before the new phones were ready, BlackBerry released another product designed to prove it could still innovate: the BlackBerry Playbook. On paper, it looked impressive. Powerful processor, excellent multitasking, beautiful display, fast operating system. Then reviewers discovered something almost unbelievable. The tablet couldn't send email by itself. The company that had invented mobile email released a tablet without native email support. Users had to pair it with a BlackBerry phone just to access one of the device's most important features. The reviews were devastating. Customers ignored it. Warehouses filled with unsold inventory. BlackBerry eventually wrote off hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. Meanwhile, Apple released one successful iPad after another, and Samsung rapidly expanded its Android lineup. By 2011, the gap between BlackBerry and its competitors had become enormous. Apple's App Store contained hundreds of thousands of applications. Android's Google Play Store was growing just as quickly. Developers increasingly ignored BlackBerry because too few people were buying its phones. Consumers avoided BlackBerry because their favorite apps weren't available. It became a vicious cycle. Fewer users meant fewer developers meant fewer apps meant even fewer users. The company that had once defined the smartphone industry was now desperately trying to catch up in a market it had invented. Then the financial results began telling a terrifying story. Sales slowed, profits collapsed, market share shrank quarter after quarter. Investors who once believed BlackBerry would dominate mobile computing started selling their shares. Within just a few years, Apple and Samsung had captured the future. BlackBerry was fighting for survival, and the hardest chapter of its story had only just begun. By 2012, the numbers told a story nobody inside Research in Motion wanted to hear. Just 3 years earlier, BlackBerry had controlled nearly half of the US smartphone market. Now its share was collapsing. Millions of loyal customers were replacing their BlackBerries with iPhones and Android devices. Companies that had once issued every employee a BlackBerry began allowing workers to bring their own phones. Governments that had relied on BlackBerry's secure network started testing alternatives. The company that had invented mobile productivity was becoming irrelevant in the very industry it had created. The crisis forced dramatic change at the top. In January 2012, co-CEOs Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsillie stepped down after leading the company for nearly 2 decades. Their partnership had built one of Canada's greatest technology success stories, but investors wanted new leadership. Thorsten Heinz became CEO with one mission: save BlackBerry before it was too late. Everything now depended on BlackBerry 10. Years of engineering had produced an entirely new operating system built on QNX. Unlike the aging software it replaced, BlackBerry 10 was fast, modern, and designed for touchscreens. It introduced innovative features like BlackBerry Hub, which brought emails, messages, calls, and notifications into one place. Reviewers praised its multitasking, smooth interface, and elegant design. For a brief moment, it looked like BlackBerry might actually recover. But technology isn't only about building a better product, it's about timing. By the time BlackBerry 10 arrived in 2013, Apple and Android had already won the ecosystem war. Millions of users had invested in apps, cloud storage, music libraries, photos, and digital services. Developers focused almost entirely on iOS and Android because that's where the customers were. BlackBerry desperately tried to attract developers with financial incentives, but convincing companies to support a shrinking platform became almost impossible. Consumers entered phone stores asking one simple question: does it have my apps? Too often, the answer was no. Instagram wasn't available. Many banking apps were missing. Streaming services arrived late. Popular games never appeared. Even though BlackBerry 10 was technically excellent, it arrived years after the market had already chosen its winners. Sales continued falling. Quarter after quarter, BlackBerry announced disappointing results. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Factories slowed production. Warehouses filled with unsold phones. Investors watched as a company once worth more than $80 billion steadily lost almost all of its value. In 2013, Research in Motion officially changed its corporate name to BlackBerry. It was a symbolic moment. The company had become so closely associated with one product that even its own identity had disappeared. Later that year, John Chen became executive chairman and CEO. Unlike previous leaders, Chen accepted a difficult reality. BlackBerry would probably never become the world's leading smartphone company again. Instead of fighting Apple and Samsung in a battle it could no longer win, he made one of the hardest decisions in corporate history. He stopped trying to save the phone business. One by one, BlackBerry reduced its hardware operations. New phone launches became less frequent. Manufacturing was outsourced. Finally, in 2016, BlackBerry announced it would no longer design smartphones itself. The company that had invented the smartphone era had officially left the smartphone business. To many people, it looked like the end, but it wasn't. It was another beginning. While the public stopped seeing the BlackBerry logo on phones, millions of people unknowingly continued using BlackBerry technology every day. The company's QNX operating system quietly became one of the world's most trusted automotive platforms. Today, it powers digital dashboards, infotainment systems, advanced driver assistance features, and safety-critical software in hundreds of millions of vehicles built by companies including BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Ford, Honda, Toyota, Volkswagen, General Motors, and many others. BlackBerry also transformed itself into a cybersecurity company. Its software now protects governments, financial institutions, hospitals, manufacturers, and critical infrastructure against cyber attacks. The company that once connected executives through email now protects some of the world's most sensitive digital systems. Perhaps that's the greatest irony of the BlackBerry story. The company never stopped being brilliant at engineering, it simply lost the consumer market. Looking back, it's easy to criticize BlackBerry for missing the touchscreen revolution, but history is rarely that simple. BlackBerry invented push email. It made secure mobile communication practical. It proved professionals would carry computers in their pockets. It influenced nearly every smartphone that followed. Apple changed what smartphones could become. BlackBerry proved why they should exist. Today, the famous physical keyboard has almost disappeared. The blinking red notification light is gone. BBM has faded into history. Yet the ideas BlackBerry pioneered live inside every modern smartphone. Push notifications, mobile email, secure messaging, always connected communication. They all trace part of their history back to a small Canadian company that believed information should move instantly through the air. And that brings us back to January the 9th, 2007, when Steve Jobs reached into his pocket and introduced the iPhone. BlackBerry laughed. They believed the future still had a keyboard. 17 years later, nearly every smartphone on Earth carries a little piece of BlackBerry's DNA. The company that once ruled mobile communication no longer makes phones. Instead, it quietly powers vehicles, protects governments, secures critical infrastructure, and continues doing what it always did better than almost anyone else: engineering. BlackBerry didn't disappear, it simply stopped being the company everyone could see. Sometimes the companies that change the world don't remain the biggest. They become the foundation on which everyone else builds. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to Dark Ledger for more stories about the companies, technologies, and people that shaped the modern world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary. Subscribe.